Hey everybody, welcome back to Rugby Wrap-Up. Matt McCarthy at the Fantasy Sports Network in New York City on West 35th Street, and we are talking rugby, and with me talking rugby is the resplendent, always powder blue-eyed Stephen Lewis of Scotland. Stephen, welcome. Good to see you.
And you, old friend. It's been too long.
It has been too long. We've been out gallivanting, Steve. Between us, we have been covering rugby in the bush leagues and the fancy places all over the place. Our frequent flyer miles and our AAA digits are astoundingly high.
Oh, if I wish, I wish.
If we could always wish for more, I guess. But it's all been good. And we're going to talk a little National Club Sevens, which happens to be in our backyard. But before we do that, I'd like to go back to the Rugby World Cup Sevens in San Francisco and get your skinny on the event.
Sure. Well, obviously, biggest event on domestic soil for some time. So the World Cup Sevens were in San Francisco 2018, a fantastic event. So from all optics, from in the eyes of the rugby world, in the eyes of world rugby, actually almost more importantly, fan experience, the competition, tremendous success. Over 100,000 people through the turnstiles. Fantastic venue, beautiful place, great competition. Format didn't pique everyone's interest to begin with, but it was great for the fan, great for the independent. So in many ways, a resounding success and a real kudos to the guys at USA Rugby, the worker bees who actually delivered it. Some of the sort of leadership who came in late to salvage it, kudos to them. And above all, to the American rugby community for actually showing up. The showing up thing's interesting because even though we had 100,000 through the gate, we didn't make a profit.
That's amazing. I think we all knew going in that it was going to be a struggle to make the money there, right? Because of the venue and the arguable lack of vetting, what it was going to cost, or proper costs and everything else. But being there, we were both there. They couldn't have really hoped for more of a turnout.
Oh, fantastic. And as we said, the fact that the American rugby community got behind it and showed up in the numbers they did made this hopefully a minimal loss rather than a disaster. So you've got to look at it positively. The optics were great. We put on an event. USA Rugby put on an event, and it looked good, and it was good. So going forward, that's what you got to build on. We knew it was going to be difficult financially, and it was less difficult based on that support. So that's a good thing.
All right. So you also wear the hat of, aside from male model, Elite Sevens coach, rugby coach, administrator. You're also a congressman, as we've talked about many times. From the Congress standpoint, from the governing body standpoint, not a success or a success?
No, same thing. It's a success. I mean, it was damage limitation. I mean, the fact that they got 100,000 people out limited the financial damage. So, again, I can't stress enough. It's not like me, but it's a very positive thing from every perspective. Obviously, the only disappointing thing, if I could move to that, was the manner in which the men's team performed in that final game. If you were to look at the performance of the two national teams, our women's team, I thought played right up to the very edge of their limit. I thought they played hard. They played well. I was quite impressed by their attitude and their performance. They lost 2 games. They probably should have lost to Australia and New Zealand in terms of talent, but they didn't. They played hard, and those were good, close games. So to the American women's team, I think satisfactory tournament. So credit there to Richie Walker and those girls. They did an excellent job.
But I got to ask you, because I get in this conversation with people all the time, the expectations now are high for both the men's and the women's 7 squads. And again, they are talented, and this is where we can really make an impact in world rankings, but they are still a Tier 2 nation in terms of resources, right? And so is that a fair expectation to beat New Zealand or Australia for the women? And is it a fair expectation for the men really to be higher?
2 different things. Obviously, there are less women's teams, so I would say less Tier 1 women's teams, but we are now a Tier 1 women's team. We're ranked 4th or 5th. We finished 4th. France had a great tournament. They went second. We should have picked them, finished up 3rd. But to finish 4th there is probably in line with talent and resources. I mean, our teams are reasonably well-resourced on the women's side of things. Men was a conundrum. I mean, they had two absolutely dominant performances against Wales and Scotland in their lime green kit, which should be prohibited henceforth. But, I mean, those were both dominant victories. They played against England. It went sort of toe-to-toe. Miracle play at the end of the game by Tom Mitchell.
In extra time.
And if that hadn't happened, no one would be talking. However, the manner in which we lost the 5th, 6th place game with Argentina is really what got tongues wagging. There seemed to be some poor body language. Team chemistry didn't seem to be what it normally is. It's normally a tight group, and certainly tongues were wagging. And what's going to be very interesting is how Mike Friday and Chris Brown managed to bounce back from this. Next year is Olympic qualification year.
Yeah.
So the series is really, really important.
Yeah.
And it starts whenever it starts, November, December, Dubai and Cape Town, what have you. So they've got to keep this team together, and that is going to be the challenge, the coaching challenge for those guys, keeping what is now a relatively senior squad, an old squad, in terms of age, keeping them together for one last hurrah, one tilt at the windmill.
Right, and that's we've talked about that a couple of times. We've talked about that off camera, and that is going to be a challenge. But the challenge now is that we are kind of out of time for this segment. We have to break for commercial, but we'll be back with more Sevens talk, the National Club Sevens, right after this.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
Hey, everybody, we are back. Matt McCarthy and Steve Lewis talking Sevens, National Club Sevens now after our Rugby World Cup Sevens segment. Steven, big deal here in New York City. Nueva York.
Yeah, so we just talked about the national team and keeping a squad together for the next Olympics 2 years' time from now. But where are the next generation of players coming from? And one of the places you look typically is Club National Sevens. So Club National Sevens are back on the East Coast for the first time in about 15 years. Not long before, not way overdue. They're being played at Baker Field, which is Columbia University, the home of Old Blue. And that's this Saturday, Sunday, 10 and 11 July.
And they're playing for the what trophy, Steve?
The Emil Cygnus Trophy.
Edmundo.
The Emperor, the man who revolutionized sevens and actually did a great deal for women's sevens internationally as well as sevens in this country. So he is duly commemorated in this trophy.
And that trophy was right here on the set.
It's a rather large trophy.
So but it's not. They said it's the cup, but it's attached to the pedestal. So you have this enormous cup. So it's not like the Stanley Cup that you can carry it around and drink from it because it's attached to the pedestal, which has the previous winners on it, right? And I think somehow we have to work in a Steve Lewis Award because you're all over Club Sevens and National Sevens. You got your Bulldog rugby hat in front of you. They're playing it. It's an Old Blue facility. Old Blue's in it, right?
Yep.
So where are your allegiances, Stephen Lewis?
Well, I think everyone knows I'm a fairly competitive SOB, so I'm Bulldog Rugby.
I think a lot of people know you're an SOB. I didn't know that they knew you were competitive.
Let's just throw competitive in front of it. I'll take that. But, obviously now I'm coaching them. It's been an interesting summer. It's an experimental summer for Bulldog. So so basically the founders and owners, Dave Fisher, Mike Newcomer, and myself decided we want to go a different tack this year. So instead of playing out of New Haven in the Northeast as a club, which traditionally they've done, we managed to, we persuaded each other that we ought to invest in young American players. So the team is essentially collegiate players, along with, a couple of grizzled veterans, Tim Stanford, who's player coach, and used to have the worst beard and the worst mullet in rugby, but he's playing pretty well this summer, and Mike Nelson, another Seattle guy. But essentially it's collegiate players. So it's going to be exciting seeing how they cope against club players, against the grizzled veterans of Old Blue and Belmont Shore, shall we say.
What is it with Stanfolds and mullets in rugby?
Well, they're not related.
I know.
Other than having bad mullets.
I don't, it's, and Lou, you better grow it back, Lou. Grow it back or I'm hunting you down.
Yeah, Lou's seen the light, and actually Tim's seen the light too. So they both have far more acceptable haircuts these days.
Well, Lou said, I got a job. I'm like, so? But now, but he did make an appearance in the MLR this season. Anyway, we digress, but you always digress when you're talking to Stanford. Anyway, last year's winner in the women's side is not in it this year. Seattle Adivas, right? So, You got a favorite in the women's division?
I don't. I'm familiar with the New York team because I know obviously the coach Reece Chadwick. I know a lot of the girls from Northeast Academy, and they've had a good summer. But have they been tested on the East Coast? Julie McCoy, she's got 2 teams in ARPTC.
Always got to watch out.
Always
for
got to
those.
watch her. She's a great coach. Joanne Liu with Scion, also a good team. Those would be the 3. But I wouldn't profess to be an expert on women's club sevens this summer. Haven't seen a great deal.
All right, imagine, if you will, we're in a situation where you are not affiliated with Bulldog Rugby and you are not affiliated with Old Blue. In fact, you're just there as a spectator, an educated spectator. Who would you, and you can't pick Old Blue and you can't pick Bulldog, so I'm going to eliminate that conflict for you. Who's the team to watch? Or teams, for the men's side?
Yeah, I think Belmont Shore look pretty useful, certainly from what I've seen. Denver. Played against them a couple times this summer. They're very well coached by Steve Laporta. Always a competitive side. Dallas Reds look intriguing. They're the self-styled dark horses, but they've got some talent there as well. So I'd probably go for those 3. Maybe the other one is New Orleans. I think New Orleans are underestimated in sevens. I just know they have Taylor Howden, who's sort of
he's an everyman.
Like Tim Stanford, another grizzled veteran, never stops playing. But they've also got Nick Feeks. They've got a guy, Cam Troxler, who I'm interested in seeing because I picked him for the Collegiate All-Americans. So New Orleans possibly as well. So those are the 4 teams I'd pick if I wasn't picking Bulldog Rugby or Old Blue.
So there's 32 teams, 16 men's teams, 16 women's teams. We mentioned last year's women's champion is not in it. Last year's men's champion
is not in
it either. So it's pretty cool that we have either this much more competition. You think that's...
No, absolutely not. I think this year is a very odd year in Club Sevens, and I think it's a down year. Even before the tournament starts. You've had the MLR, which is a fantastic thing, but what that's done is it's probably prevented about 140, 120, I would say, players participating sevens. Different clubs have different focus.
120.
Foci. Yeah, probably. So I think the standard is going to be down a little bit, which potentially could make it a more interesting competition, right? It could be. I think it's more wide open. I just think it's just an odd year. I mean,
so do you think is it a contract issue for players not to be playing in this?
Partly that, and partly the season ended fairly late, so a lot of guys weren't able to transition to sevens without a decent break. There was also some waiver issues, so I was involved in a lot of these waiver eligibility decisions, and there are deadlines and there are cutoffs, and in order to retain the integrity of the club sevens competition, you have to have deadlines. You can't have people just loading up the week before and saying we want to play for Team X. So I think it's an odd year, and I think the standard may be down, but it could be an interesting tournament in many ways because I think it's wide open.
See, you see it as a down year, and I understand that, but I'm always the glass full guy, and I'm going to say, well, the opportunity that is lost by these of not having the MLR players that might have been in the tournament is also an opportunity for other players to get their name on the radar, get some exposure, and it also means that we have more players involved in more competitions across the board, which can help, right?
Sure.
More than hurt.
Absolutely. And there are very, very few opportunities for players to stake a claim to put their hands up. Club Sevens is one. 2 weeks later, Rugby Town Sevens in Glendale is another. The ODA system is sort of creaking. Northeast aren't as active as they were. Tiger are just getting active again. So Club Sevens actually fills an important place on the opportunity, ladder.
So why were these academies? Where were they? Why are they just getting up to speed again?
It's mostly funding. So not most of the good things that happened, but in sevens for a while there, it was mostly privately funded. So for instance, Paul Holmes, James Walker with Tiger,
right?
David Fisher, Mike Newcomer with Bulldog, Northeast Academy through the Empire Union and the New England Union. But funding gets tighter, things get squeezed, and there's less opportunity for players. And unfortunately, the National Union is not really in a position to step in there and provide that.
All right, as a congressman, do you think that's going to change?
Not in the immediate future. You know, we're in hock.
Yeah, we're strapped right now.
We're strapped.
I guess, you know, it's pretty cool that it's in New York City, number one.
Fantastic.
Right? Columbia is a great facility.
If you can make it here.
You can't make it anywhere, folks. Or you can. You can make it here. Now, but also it's on Flow Rugby. So it'll be live streamed. People can watch. Athletes getting exposure, male and female.
Yeah, I think a bunch of kids coming from like Knoxville, Tennessee, DC, Irvine, California. They're going to have dinner at Carmine's on 91st Street on Friday night and then take the subway to the national tournament on a Saturday. They don't know this yet, but they're getting a taste of New York. Yeah. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And as well as the rugby.
Subways?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right to the right.
All the way out there. 215th. Walk the last 2 blocks.
You haven't lived, ladies and gentlemen, until you've taken the subway, which is not bad, up to Columbia, and it's a short walk, but it's, you know,
been doing it for years.
It's we've survived. So don't believe the hype. It's all good. It's all good. It's going to be a great tournament. It's exciting. I'm going to be up there as much as possible. I know that you'll be there. But how do we fix a match?
Yeah, it's no matches will get fixed.
I know, I'm kidding. It would be pretty blatant if you fix it. But you know, sevens, you guys, you put all this work in, and then it's over in an eye blink, right?
Well, that's the thing with sevens. Sevens, I always refer to it. Sevens is a cruel mistress. You know, one bounce of the ball, one interception, one bad decision, one refereeing decision. A lot of things can happen. You know, in 15s, the best team wins 90% of the time. In sevens, it's not the case.
Are you blaming referees for any potential?
Not at all.
I'll be really out of character for you ahead of a match.
No, not at all.
Okay. And the format, should we change it to the one-off like the World Cup Sevens?
No, I don't think so. I think this is a good format. I think it allows you to misfire once on day one and still recover and come through and improve as the tournament goes on. With this pool format, 3 games in the first day. So you can win 2 and go through. And the key game is the first game on day 2, the first game on Sunday. That's quarterfinal. The World Cup thing was just like, that was brutal.
Oh, it was crazy. And it was interesting because Ben Ryan on camera said that he was in favor of it. Mike Friday on camera thought it was absurd. No, so
one was coaching in the tournament, one wasn't.
Exactly. All right, but Steve, we're basically out of time. Final thoughts on National Club Sevens.
It's a fantastic weekend. So it's non-stop action, 10 o'clock in the morning till probably 6:30 or so at night, both days. It's going to be some great rugby, some good performances, strong local teams. And why wouldn't you go? What else are you doing? What else are you doing this weekend?
All right, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to pick the New York Rugby Club to win the women's division, coached by Daniel Steele novel cover man Richard Chadwick. How do you think about it? You like that?
Sure, I think they'll be a contender, yeah. I think they'll be top 4.
He's not going out on the limb that I just went out on. That I want everybody to know that he's not going along with New York Rugby Club because he's an old blue guy. And on that note, on behalf of my friend, my powder blue-eyed friend, Steve Lewis, Matt McCarthy at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34 in New York City, talking rugby, but signing off for now.